Hello, thank you for joining us. We begin our report on the campaign trail with just over a week to go until Election Day. Early voting is underway in most states. On Monday, President Biden joined the roughly 45 million people nationwide who have already cast their ballot. Both Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump campaigned in swing states Monday. Harris is focusing on manufacturing jobs in Michigan, while Trump is in Georgia, where he spoke at a roundtable with faith leaders. But it was Trump's Sunday campaign stop that's driving headlines today. Both Democrats and Republicans have come forward to condemn Trump's opening act at his rally Sunday at Madison Square Garden in New York City. Crude comments made by comedian Tony Hinchcliffe upstaged what was meant to be a massive platform for Trump to make his closing argument of the election.
Believe it or not, people, I welcome migrants to the United States of America with open arms. And by open arms, I mean like this. You know, there's a lot going on. Like, I don't know if you guys know this, but there's literally a floating island of garbage in the middle of the ocean right now. Yeah. I think it's called Puerto Rico.
Regarding the Puerto Rico comment, a senior advisor for the former president said, quote, "This joke does not reflect the views of President Trump." The former president did not directly respond to Hinchcliffe's remarks, but made light of some of the language he uses at his rallies.
And sometimes I'll use a little bit, not hard foul, but soft foul. We call it soft foul. But, you know, to emphasize something about somebody's capabilities or whatever I might be talking about. I'm not sure. Every once in a while you need a little bit of something, a little spice to juice them up a little bit.
Before heading to her first stop of the day, Harris paused to call out her opponent's campaign rhetoric as she works to showcase the differences between herself and Trump as part of her final pitch to voters.
He is focused and actually fixated on his grievances, on himself, and on dividing our country. And it is not in any way something that will strengthen the American family, the American worker.
The remarks from Trump's Madison Square Garden rally are reverberating across communities, in particular on Latino voters in the swing state of Pennsylvania, which has a large Puerto Rican population. Here's what one previously undecided voter said Monday when asked about how she made her final decision to vote for Harris.
Last 4 years, it was not the best, I would say, for the country. So that had me, I really, not sure which side to pick. And with the comments that happened yesterday, I finally said, no, I have to be in the right side of the history. I need to pick right thing, not only for me, for my family, and for my beloved Puerto Rico.
I'm joined now by CBS News political director Fin Gómez, who was at the Trump rally last night, and CBS News senior White House and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe, who's in Ann Arbor, Michigan, following the Harris campaign. Good evening to both of you, and thank you for being here. Fin, what is the Trump campaign saying about this?
Well, Lindsay, just a little while ago, I confirmed a report that was initially in the Bulwark online publication that said that the sources close to the campaign said that they received a pre-approved list of jokes. They did look at jokes of this comedian in question, and they vetted two questions. They say one that had very profane words about women, including one with the C word, and then also they say that the questions that this comedian utilized in the garden in the rally last night were not on the list, and they were ad-libbed. This is, of course, this is per source familiar of last night's rally, involved in last night's rally. But again, this is per this Trump source.
Yeah, and the same was said by senior Trump advisor Brian Lanza to our Major Garrett just moments ago. Not the part about the expletive that this comedian apparently intended to use to describe Harris. But Ed, how is the Harris campaign responding, both publicly and behind the scenes?
Well, even as the Trump campaign apparatus tries to separate itself from what was said, what the Harris campaign noticed overnight into this morning was how quickly this moment, this viral moment now, spread across the Puerto Rican and broader Latino diaspora and became part of the national conversation today as word of it and clips of it spread. There are indications, if you look at the data in Google Trends, that there was more searching done about this incident than there was in the hours after Taylor Swift announced her endorsement of Vice President Harris. Just to give you a sense of like recent campaign-related sign of viral moments, the campaign flagged that for us. We checked it out as well, and it appears that that gives you some sense of how quickly this was spreading. It has been turned into a campaign ad that is now set to be aired, mostly digitally, targeting Latino and specifically Puerto Rican communities. And ultimately, the campaign and Democrats who are tracking things for them agree where this is likely to have the most impact is with that voter you just played from Philadelphia. Philadelphia, Allentown, Harrisburg. There are pockets of Puerto Rican neighborhoods and communities in that area where thousands of votes are up for grabs. There was big concern among Democrats that Latino men, especially Puerto Rican men in Pennsylvania, would be among those breaking towards the former president, given his policies and his style. They now believe this may have helped stop that potentially, and certainly has at least raised awareness among Latino voters across the country. And this coincided, Lindsay, real quick, with the release of Harris's Puerto Rican sort of policy that she presented last night, timing it to this event, having a feeling that perhaps this might be part of why Trump was in New York to begin with, was to target the city and the region's broader Puerto Rican voting population. It was endorsed by entertainers like Jennifer Lopez, Ricky Martin, and Bad Bunny. That helped amplify it as well. So it's a Trump stumble that the Harris team is exploiting and was able to exploit pretty quickly.
So, Finn, Trump is campaigning in Georgia. It's his 10th time in the battleground state. What tone is he striking on the heels of the MSG rally?
A defined one. I think he's still focusing on his two main critical issues at the heart of his campaign, which is immigration and inflation. Sources close to the campaign tell me that they don't intend to change that, and that will still be his focus in this last stretch. We're, of course, only about a week away, Lindsay, until Election Day.
At Michelle Obama rallied with Harris over the weekend. She made a pitch on reproductive rights, but she made the pitch to men. Let's listen.
Let me warn you, your rage does not exist in a vacuum. If we don't get this election right, your wife, your daughter, your mother, we as women will become collateral damage to your rage.
Why is the Harris campaign choosing this messaging from this political figure at this moment?
Because she wanted to deliver it, and she wanted to deliver it in that battleground state. And what I found most interesting, Lindsay, is she told that crowd, I have just delivered this speech. Make sure you send clips of it to your friends and neighbors or to the men in your life, she was saying to the women in the audience. This was designed as well to go viral, but in essence to go viral in a better, more effective way for a campaign than the incident that happened Sunday at Madison Square Garden with the Trump campaign. And it's a message they expect will resonate across the country as women especially make their final decisions and maybe drag along their husbands, their boyfriends, their brothers, their fathers.
Fin Gómez and Ed O'Keefe, thank you. Let's bring in CBS News Chief Washington correspondent Major Garrett. Major, thanks for being with us. If Sunday's rally was meant as Trump's closing argument, what is it?
So I think it was meant as the beginning of the Trump closing argument. And as you mentioned at the top of the show, Lindsay, for 45 million or so Americans, the argument's already closed. They've already voted. And that's something we should think about. That's about 28% of the entire turnout in 2020. So for a quarter of our country, this election is already effectively over. But what Trump was hoping to do in Madison Square Garden was to say, hey, I can play the garden. I'm a celebrity. Everyone knows that. What he didn't want was a note of incredibly deep division, which is what he got from this comedian. And that comedian is associated with this rally and therefore associated with the Trump campaign. And they have to own all of the blowback because they put the show on. If the comedian went off and went rogue, quote unquote, as the Trump advisors are now saying, that's their fault. True, because it's their place. It's their venue. They're responsible for everything that comes with it. And the last thing the Trump campaign wanted was to give fodder to the Harris campaign to create digital ads, to create voter outreach, to motivate people who might not have been paying attention to something that they might find something that's not only offensive, but possibly motivating. That's the backdrop of this particular rally. And part of it does not work to the Trump campaign's advantage, and that's putting it mildly.
Trump and J.D. Vance could also come out and disavow these comments. J.D. Vance on the campaign trail today said we're too quick to be offended.
Well, of course, and that is one of the subtexts of the Trump campaign, has been since 2015. What offends people on the left or center left, they find offensive themselves, and they rally Americans to say, we're too snowflakey, we're too sensitive, and we can't win in the world, we can't win on a global stage if we're so sensitive. We need to be tougher, we need to be more aggressive. That is part and parcel of the Trump message, has been for a very long time. Vance echoes that, and that will come with part of their defense for what happened yesterday.
The comedian wasn't the only person to speak at the rally to make a splash, so to speak. Let's go ahead and play part of this from Stephen Miller, Trump's top immigration advisor.
Who's going to stand up and say the cartels are gone, the criminal migrants are gone, the gangs are gone, America is for Americans and Americans only?
America is for Americans is rhetoric that might be reminiscent for some of KKK pamphlets of yesteryear. What is your reaction?
So what the Trump campaign always does with this supremely harsh rhetoric is puts it in a larger context of immigration, talking about cartels. No one in this country is in favor of criminal cartels, not small, not medium, not large. But that rhetoric itself separates that if you listen carefully. America is for Americans. Well, who decides who an American is? Trust me. Those who work closest with former President Trump, if they return to the White House and the Department of Homeland Security and Border Patrol and ICE, they will make those determinations. They will decide who an American is and who American isn't. And when the president talks about the larger danger to America coming from within our country than externally, you put those two things together, you have something that many voters will ponder as they come to the decision about where to vote and who to vote in this election.
Major Garrett, really enjoyed your panel at the end of America Decides. Thanks for sticking around for the Daily Report.
Sure.
You can watch Election Night with the CBS News team live from our election headquarters in New York and with our teams spread out across the country. Join us for real-time results, analysis, and exclusive polling. Coverage starts at 4 p.m. Eastern on CBS News 24/7 and continues at 7 p.m. Eastern on CBS.